I'm Karen, 65 years old, and I've been through a lot in life. But last summer, something happened that neither Alice nor I ever saw coming. Alice has been my neighbor and best friend for over 30 years. We've shared everything, our joys, our losses, and even the loneliness that comes with time. Then, a young couple moved in next door, Jessica and her husband. They were full of energy, always laughing, always bringing this fresh new vibe into the neighborhood. But it was Jessica who really caught my attention. She was different. There was something about her presence. It was magnetic. When she talked to you, she made you feel like you were the most important person in the room. Alice noticed it too. "She's not like the others," she said one afternoon, sipping her tea. I didn't think much of it at the time, but soon little things started standing out, like the way Jessica looked at me, how her touch lingered a second too long when she handed me a cup of tea, or how she always seemed to be watching me in a crowded room. I told myself I was imagining things. But then came that night. It was a hot summer evening, the kind where the air feels thick and even the crickets seem to slow down. Jessica showed up at my door with a plate of homemade cookies. "My husband's out of town and I didn't feel like being alone," she said with that bright smile. So we sat on my porch swing, chatting about everything and nothing. Then came a pause, not awkward, but heavy, like the world had just held its breath for a moment. And then she looked at me, really looked at me. "I've never met anyone like you before," she said. I had no idea how to respond. From my living room window, I could feel Alice watching us. She had been onto something all along. I stood up. "Let me refresh our tea," I said, breaking the moment and walking into the kitchen. I needed a distraction, something to keep me grounded. I didn't hear her follow me in. When I turned around, she was standing there in my kitchen doorway, barefoot, her hair slightly tousled from the evening breeze. She looked ethereal. "You didn't have to come inside," I said, trying to sound casual. "I didn't want to sit out there alone," she replied, her voice soft but carrying a weight that settled in the air between us. I turned back to the counter, focusing on pouring the tea, but I could feel her, the warmth of her presence, the shift in the atmosphere. And then her hand brushed against mine. It was light, almost nothing, but it stayed a moment too long. When I looked up, our eyes met. There was no mistaking it now. Whatever invisible line we had been carefully tiptoeing around was gone. I should have stepped back. I should have said something. But I couldn't move. She leaned in, just a fraction. "Should we?" she whispered, so quietly I almost didn't hear her. I had no idea how to answer. Then the doorbell rang. It was Alice. Jessica and I exchanged a glance, a look that held everything and nothing at the same time. I hesitated. "I should answer that," I muttered, trying to pull myself back to reality. I opened the door, and there was Alice standing there, her expression a mix of curiosity and something else. She was dressed casually, but her eyes flickered between me and Jessica, picking up on the tension in the air. For a moment, no one spoke. She just stood there, looking between the two of us. "Hey, Alice," I said, forcing a smile, but I could hear the nervousness in my own voice. She tilted her head slightly, narrowing her eyes. "I was just home," she said, shrugging casually, her smile slightly off. "Thought I'd stop by and check in." Her gaze lingered on Jessica a little longer than usual. I could feel Jessica hesitating behind me, her presence still warm, still electric. Her hand, which had been lightly touching my arm, finally pulled away. And then, out of nowhere, Jessica reached out and grabbed Alice's wrist. "Come inside," she said, her voice smooth. At that moment, everything shifted. There was no turning back now. To be continued in part 2. Share your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe to Infidelity Stories for more stories.